Welcome everybody to the Kitchen Garden Podcast. This is episode 88 and we're all in our virtual sheds here. We've got Emma Rawlings here.
Hello.
Hello. And Tony Flanagan.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're all socially distanced. Just having a chat about what we've been doing on our plots and all that sort of thing. And we thought this month we'd make it a little bit different and have a Q&A session. So we've got lots of questions from our followers on various platforms. So you'll find us on Facebook and Twitter, Instagram and Pinterest. So we've and also YouTube, of course. And lots of people have been asking us questions, and we thought we'd have a little session in trying to answer a few of them for you. Anybody who doesn't get mentioned, we'll do our best to answer them on the comments section on the various sites. So, are you ready for this game? We're going to try and answer everybody's problems. We've got marital problems, tax, and all the rest of it to get through. But we'll start with an easy one first. So we've got Eric Thompson, who is a follower on Facebook, and he's asking what he can do about apple scab. Don't know how many we've got apple trees. We've got a couple of apple trees. Been really lucky with mine. Don't tend to suffer too much with scab, but I know some varieties are worse than others, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean that's the classic symptoms of that, of course, are the scabby brown markings on the fruit, but you also get them on the leaves, don't you?
That's right. Yeah.
Caused by a fungus.
Yeah, and I mean, you can often peel it off, can't you? It doesn't always go much deeper than the skin, but it's it can get bad. It can.
Mm.
Yeah.
I've got an old apple tree, and I get scab every year. And there's not a great deal you can do, is there? You can't use a fungicide on it.
Not
so
anymore,
it's
no,
down to scraping the leaves up and burning them.
Yeah, well, that's a good thing to do, isn't it? Because it overwinters. It's a fungus that overwinters in the fallen leaves, and like Emma was saying, on the branches as well. So you often get like little cankers, don't you? There's another disease called canker, but you get little marks on the stems where you can see they're infected on the little thin twigs, and you can prune those out as well when you're doing your winter and your summer pruning. So that certainly helps.
I mean, the main thing, I think, it's varieties, isn't it? If you're thinking about having planting apples, then it's one thing to consider, isn't it? You can perhaps get some varieties a little bit more resistant. Yeah,
get some expert advice, really. Go to an apple day or something, which should be coming around pretty soon, won't they now? There's probably had some apple days around the country. But if you see a variety you like, perhaps get some advice before you buy it to make sure it is scab resistant. Eric doesn't say what his variety is, unfortunately, but if you have a look on websites of some of the bigger fruit tree companies, the fruit suppliers, they'll tell you what the scab resistant ones are. We've got another question here from Malcolm Brown on YouTube, and he's saying, is wood chip okay to put on his compost heap? He says he's heard that it uses up nitrogen, but being part of the brown constituent, does that mean it's ideal to compost? What do we think? Well, I'll get a lot of this as well, because I think he also mentioned somewhere, I think, that he's pruning hedges. So I always have this bit of a perennial problem for me too.
Well, the thing about shredding and wood chip is it's obviously gone through a shredder and it's smaller pieces, but it's still pretty dense wood, isn't it? And it's. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't personally put much on a compost heap. I mean, it's the sort of thing you probably sprinkle an inch or two on it and then dig it into the heap. And it might provide carbon and help with the the balance of the greens and the browns to get good composting. But it's the sort of thing, to be honest, you're going to have too much of it to put it on the compost heap. I think you're going to have to make a separate heap and then use it on pathways and things, natural pathways, or once it's completely really rotted down. I mean, it's the sort of thing you perhaps could put a bit more on the compost heap, but not straight really, as it's just been shredded.
I wonder what it's like as a mulch around, on the surface, because imagine that it's not going to tie in the nitrogen quite so much if it's on the surface.
No, I think that's right. Yeah, I mean, I've used it as mulch on paths and things. I think it's perfectly okay there. Use on that sort of.
I certainly wouldn't use it on. I mean, I think probably fairly fresh. You might get away with it around a few shrubs, but I think if you're putting it on sort of say your around your brassicas, right, immediately around your vegetable plants, I would say not a good idea, because it will draw on the nitrogen from the soil, won't it, as it's been broken down. So I mean, but good for pathways. I mean, even if it edges onto a border or onto a vegetable border, it's not quite so bad. But I certainly wouldn't sort of put it immediately right next to vegetable plants.
Yeah. Many years ago, I put some round some broad bean plants, and they went yellow.
Oh right, that's
and that was probably why.
Well, that shows, didn't it?
Yeah.
I said, why they all got yellow? The others were fine.
So fine, as long as I suppose if you are gonna put it around shrubs and things, perhaps a little bit of high nitrogen fertilizer down first on the soil first. But it will break down, won't it? I had some in a big bulk bag once when I'd shreddings from my hedges, as I say, and it took a long time. I mean, it took perhaps a couple of years, but even just left on its own, it does break down eventually, and I could just use it, as any other compost then. But so I suppose in answer to Malcolm's question, it's just you can use it on the heap, but just in small amounts, and like everything else, really, just small amounts. Mix it in with plenty of green as well. Yeah. All right. Hey, we're ripping through these, folks. There's going to be one we don't know in a minute, and then we'll be in trouble. But we've got a question from James. James Haviland is asking, when is it okay to split rhubarb? Says he often reads that it's recommended in the winter, but where he lives, the ground can be frozen and under snow a lot of the time.
Sounds like Scotland.
It does. Doesn't say exactly, but it does sound like that, doesn't it? Yeah. Well, I suppose the answer to that is really whenever they're dormant, isn't it? So you can split them from sort of November onwards, really. So perhaps he could split them when the weather's not quite so, before the weather gets quite so bad.
It might get quite bad before then in Scotland.
Yeah, I suppose it might. Yeah.
I mean, I think if you live somewhere that really is harsh weather, I would say that, I mean, you could probably get away with it as soon as the leaves are starting to get really sort of collapsing and just towards the end of autumn, don't you think, or end of October even, maybe you might get away with it. It's certainly better than spring, isn't it?
Yeah. As long as it's dormant, it should be fine, shouldn't it? So you have to sort of interpret these things, don't you, a little bit, and adapt them to where you live. But as long as it's dormant, I think it should be all right. We've got a video on YouTube, haven't we? Of us all splitting a clump of rhubarb. I think it took all three of us to dig it up, didn't it?
It seemed to go down forever, didn't it?
Yeah. Well, it was in your garden, Tony. It'd probably been there a while, hadn't it? I should imagine.
It probably had, actually,
Yeah, so if you want to see watch a video of three old codgers trying to dig up a clump of rhubarb, just visit YouTube.
Speak for yourself.
Cheeky devils.
I'm in trouble. I'm really in trouble.
Just as well we're socially distanced.
It is, but I'm only saying it because you can't get at me, Oh, we're moving on quickly. We've got a question from Pauline Gamble. She's asking if sowing carrots in pots, should she feed them? So she's tried growing carrots, but they're often pale in colour and the centre is woody. What is she doing wrong?
Presumably she means that she's growing them in the soil and they're going pale in colour, I think, and so she's thinking of growing them in pots. Do you think that's what she means?
Oh, possibly. Yeah, it could be. I mean, I must admit, I've had similar problems in both, really, in pots and the soil. But I've always put it
Have you?
down more to watering. Really, always seems a lot worse in dry weather. You get sort of a much harder core in the carrot, don't you? It can be quite unpleasant to eat
Yeah.
sometimes. And some varieties I find seem to suffer more than most from that, having these sort of harder, thicker cores in the middle. And also going more of a yellowy colour than orange if they've been through a drought, been too dry. Now, even this year, I was growing some outside in the plot, and despite watering regularly with the old watering can, they never really got the soil wet enough. And it's only when you get a good downpour of rain that the soil was really soaked.
Yeah, well, we had some very dry spells, didn't we? I had the same actually, Steve. My carrots just didn't do that well, and water them, but even that wasn't probably enough with those dry spells we had.
No. But she was saying, what should you feed them with? And I mean, certainly in pots, it's even worse, isn't it? Because they're relying on you for food and water all the time. Then, even if you get a good downpour, often it runs off, doesn't it, off of the leaves. So you've got to give them even more water then. But she's saying what to feed them with, and I don't know about you guys, I just give them a tomato feed really. Whenever I'm going around feeding the tomatoes, I'll splash those carrots, and whether they're outside or in pots, in the ground or in pots, with a bit of tomato food.
You could use something like Miracle Grow or Phostogen, couldn't you, as well? I mean, there's all sorts of feeds. Sort of anything really, maybe occasionally. We don't overfeed.
No.
Once a week, once a fortnight would probably be enough, really.
Yeah, should be fine, shouldn't it? So, so really, just a good general feed, maybe depending on what stage of growth they're at, I suppose. A good high potash one, perhaps, when they're sort of later on, to get the roots really growing. High phosphate one and potash, to really get them going. But yeah, don't overfeed, as you say. Cool. I've got another question here. It's a question on thyme, the herb thyme, rather than father thyme. Any thyme I buy dies. Oh, this is really sad. They're hardy. It says, are they hardy, and how much water do I give them?
Probably not a lot.
They're a bit tricky thyme, aren't they? I find.
Yeah,
I've had quite a few thyme peg out on me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is with them, they like quite a sort of free draining soil, don't they? They don't like it too clay soil. They don't like it too boggy and too damp. And they like a nice full sunny site. I think if you've got heavy clay soil, it might be worth growing them in a pot. And it's also recommended that the other thing that happens with thymes is they get old very quickly, don't they? I mean, I know they're perennial, but if you don't keep them trimmed, they get all scraggly and
they get horribly woody, don't they?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's one of those things you've either got to just keep renewing them, or you just keep, snipping them off. I mean, certainly if they do flower, they recommend taking the flowers off. Well, immediately they finish flower, and remove the flowers and just trim a light trim. So the idea is it keeps it more bushy growing, but they are a bit notorious, I think, thymes actually.
They're not too bad to grow from seed. The seeds are very small, but if you're patient, and you can get some nice fresh thyme just from seed rather than buying them from the garden centre ready formed. Yeah. So because like you say, they can go really woody. Mine have, and I just get rid of them in the end and sow some fresh.
Yeah. It's not a bad idea actually, because you could sow a lot, couldn't you? And then you can just keep them and sow them every couple of years, and then you can actually create a lot more. You get a lot more plants. Whereas if you just buy one from a garden centre, you're still paying quite a lot of money just for a small pot. Whereas if you sow them, you're going to have a lot more young plants. You're ticking over, aren't you? Really?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I've certainly had the best results from mine in pots this year, I think, because I'm on heavy clay as well. So they really don't live very long at all out in the garden. I have to put them in compost and add a bit of grit to it when I'm planting them up, and a bit round the top as well. Apart from looking decorative, I think it just helps keep the stems a bit drier, and anything that gets the water draining through, really. But lovely plants, aren't they? Lovely in their own right.
Oh,
There's so many different varieties.
Yeah.
Really great. Yeah, but I think once you can get them going, we do occasionally get them coming up in a sort of gravel area that we've got. They will just self-seed very occasionally.
Right, yeah.
But very well drained, as you say. So that's the only part of the garden that is, I suppose, with the gravel, and they do enjoy that. Yeah, that's great. Oh, we've got through a few questions there, guys.
Oh, I think we missed a question, I think.
Did we?
Yeah.
There was one about, apparently one on YouTube we had about sharpening tools. And what's the best tool for sharpening secateurs?
Oh,
well,
right.
but funny they should ask that, Steve. Hey.
Just so happens.
Somebody written something about that recently.
Well, it might have done. Yeah, I can't think who it was. That's right. Yeah, yeah. It just so happens in our December issue, we've got a very full and detailed feature on sharpening tools and looking after tools. We actually mention how to do it with secateurs as well. So, I always use just a whetstone or a oil stone, or I've got a nifty little file that I bought for only about £3, I think, from the hardware store. It's just a very fine file, so you can actually file the blade without taking the secateurs to pieces. But if you get a posher pair of secateurs, just once a year, you'll find you can quite easily just take them to bits and take the blade out. So it's much easier to sharpen, and I do that once a year and sharpen it on a stone. But a full and comprehensive feature in the December issue. So do look out for that.
I must read it.
Yeah. Oh, I've just found the question. Yeah, I do apologise. That was from Graham Thomas who asked the question. So apologies there, Graham, if I missed you, but we did at least answer your question in the end. Yes. Oh, he has asked another question, actually, Graham, if we've got time. He was saying about if you can get well rotten cow muck, is it worth putting on fish blood and bone as well? I think there's probably different answers from different people on this one, because I've only read recently. I think it's Charles Dowding who was saying if you've got really good compost, and you put it on and you're generous with it, then you may not have to use anything else. But I must admit, I always do both. Don't know about you chaps, but
well, yeah, I think it's so variable, isn't it? Manure. I mean, depends on the manure you're using. I think cow manure is quite rich, actually, but it depends on a lot. It depends on a lot of factors, doesn't it? And because you don't really know what you're putting on, you don't really know what the nutrients are. It might not be a bad idea to put something like blood, fish and bone on as well, because you're getting, that's a kind of, balanced feed. And because it's organic, it will break down kind of similar to the cow manure. So you're kind of going to kind of cover all your bases without, I don't think, overdoing it too much. I mean, I wouldn't I'd be less inclined to put, say, cow manure on and then an really strong artificial fertilizer, perhaps. Yeah. Whereas blood, fish and bone, I think, is a kind of a more natural, sort of breaks down slower. So I think I might put both on. I've used horse manure from the yard where I've got horses, and I didn't find it particularly great, because I don't think it's particularly high in nutrients, horse manure. It can say it's very variable. So I'll put something else on as well.
Yeah, Graham did mention about checking any manure that you get from farms. The fields haven't been used in herbicide sprays, because that is that is a problem, isn't it? Big problem if you get ones that have been sprayed, and you put it on your plot, and then you find that all your plants are dying.
Yeah, so destroyed.
You've got to be careful where you source it from, basically.
Yeah, I think you should always check wherever you get it from. Check obviously the farmer where it's come from. The farm where it's come from. I just checked they haven't used any herbicides on the fields.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Oh well. Yeah. So use both. We're thinking. I use bloodfish and bone a lot really around the garden. I think it's really good organic feed, and it's cheap as well. And so that's another. Don't like to spend money, so a great big tub of it is lasts me for years, and it's quite cheap money. It's good.
There are alternatives. There are alternatives, though, if you don't really want to go along that route. If you're vegan or something and you want to do something, you don't want to use animal products. You can use, there are other things around. There's more and more products coming on the market now for those that are vegan and don't want to use animal products, aren't there? Comfrey is a good alternative as well. Yeah, comfrey pellets.
Comfrey,
Yeah.
In fact, in the January issue, we've got a really good. We're going to look out for a feature on making your own fertilizers. So nettle and comfrey and covering it all. See, stick with kitchen garden.
It's a great kitchen garden. It covers all bases. It covers everything.
It does. Absolutely.
Read it for a year, and you've got everything covered.
We are the manure and the bloodfish and bone of the gardening world. In fact. Yeah. Great. Well.
Right.
Have we got? I think we've run out of time there, chaps. I think we're getting a bit.
I think we've covered them all, haven't we?
Covered them all. So we'll have to do this again. This was fun. We'll do this again.
Fun.
Yeah, send us your questions.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, as we mentioned before, you'll find us on all the usual platforms. So Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and Pinterest. We've got the website as well. So of course you can, and YouTube. So visit all those various. You're going to be so busy visiting us on all those channels. But of course you can ask questions on any of those, or just get in touch with us through the magazine, and we'll do our best to answer your questions for you. So thank you very much for listening. If you've enjoyed this, then you can find out more about the magazine, or even take out a subscription. www.classicmagazines.co.uk. And say visit the website kitchengarden.co.uk. We hope you've enjoyed the podcast and that you'll listen again. Thanks very much. If you've enjoyed this video, press the like button and also give us a comment. Let us know what you're doing in the garden at the moment. And if you like our videos generally, it'd be really great if you'd subscribe to our YouTube channel.